Hi, you've reached and Ginger Hawn Cooper presents
Molly Cooper.
And Molly Cooper, our cat, who is an animal shelter cat that we got when she was a kitten. And we represent what, Katie? What do we present?
They already know.
Well, we got to tell them again. They might not know. They might not have never seen us. The Determined Genealogist. And we're talking about family stories today. Now, before we begin, every family is unique. Every ancestry is unique. Trying to find your roots is a unique thing. It's a personal thing, and it's there's stories that people don't want to know about. Go let her out. Okay.
Molly's not in the video anymore.
No, we let her outside because she was like, meow, meow, meow. Carrying on. You know how cats are. Well, this video is about family stories. But before we get started, I want you to know I got the syllabus for Daddy put on the Determined Genealogist group page on Facebook. And I've got that listed there. And that's ways that I found records out about him. And some of those I'm sure will help you. This is a syllabus for 5 about family stories and what to ask for when you're talking to relatives and what to write down and all that sort of thing, because it's very important that you keep good records of things that you find. Now, the first story is...
I'm not doing anything.
Okay. The first story is about my grandma. Now, my cousin Dean sent me this picture. He works with the Historical Society, and he found this picture in the archives, or in with the society. Now, this is my grandmother when she was in high school. This was her aunt. Remember I told you that Grandma, her mother was an only child, and the dad didn't marry for a few years afterwards. When he did, this is one of his children. He had 5 or 6 children by his second wife. Well, anyway, these girls played on a basketball team, and here's Grandma loved to play basketball, and my grandfather always called her Jimmy. Now, I thought, that's kind of a weird name. Where in the world did she get Jimmy from? Now, I knew her real name was Adeline Lulu, bless her heart, Adeline Lulu Metzger. And I knew that her name was that, but he always called her Jimmy, and I was wondering why. Well, the story is when these girls played basketball, they all took on names of famous basketball players at that time, men. And so her name was Jimmy, and that's where she got her nickname. So that was a family story I thought I'd share with you. Then the next story, do you remember about Miss Hollywood? Do you remember I telling you about Miss Hollywood? Do you remember? No. Where did Miss Hollywood go to? Do you remember?
Hollywood.
Hollywood, that's right. Okay, did she just up and disappear, or what do you think happened to her?
I don't know.
You don't know? Don't know? Well, I want to tell the story of our Miss Hollywood. Her name was Blanche Irene Hawn, a.k.a. Miss Hollywood, as I've nicknamed her. And the story is in our family that we're related to Natalie Wood. How? I don't know. Miss Natalie Wood had Italian ancestors, because I've looked. Goldie Hawn, Hawn, okay, which could be true, but her family came from Maryland, and I believe she took her name from her grandfather, the Hawn. Don't quote me on that. I haven't found any link, but those are stories. Well, then the story is that my grandfather's sister was a little bit rebellious, and she ended up in Hollywood working in silent films. Now, that was one of my quests, is to find out more about a.k.a. Miss Hollywood. Well, I pick up, there's there's pictures of her. I have a couple of pictures of her when she was little. Katy's moving the mouse, and it's like, oh, my nose is on her nose. It's really weird, but y'all can't see that anyway. And she tickles me sometimes. I don't even know what she's doing in these videos, but when I go back and I look at them, I laugh because she's cracking me up. Well, anyway, so on to the story. All right, now see, she says all this weird stuff in the videos. I don't even know it.
Okay.
Anyway, so Miss Hollywood was Granddad's sister, his older sister by a couple of years, and she was rebellious. Now, which made it harder is that her parents, her father was a Methodist minister. Her grandfather was a Methodist minister. She was surrounded by Methodist ministers. And her mom was a minister's wife, okay, which means, you know, you act a certain way, you do things a certain way, you know, reputation is very important, okay? And Blanche, aka Miss Hollywood, was rebellious, and she took off and ran away. When she was 16 years old, she ran off with a guy named Floyd Rash, and she married him. Now, she had a couple kids by him, and come to find out, he was not legally divorced. He had told her he was, but he wasn't, so her marriage was void. Okay, so then she got with a guy named Brimmer, and she went ahead and she was with him for a short time, and he ran off, and so she divorced him. She thought she was divorced. Well, at this time, Blanche started corresponding with somebody, and his name was Tiernan, and he was a professor at Notre Dame, and he was a very, very influential man. He was a lawyer. He was, his wife they were high society, and
The video is long.
the video's long. It's only 7 minutes long. Okay, it's not that long. Okay, so anyway, he was a very influential man. He was a lawyer. He was a professor, and so she started corresponding with him. Now, my quest for her, you know, I found some birth records of her children. Here's the marriage record to Floyd. And of course she lied in it. She said she was 20. She wasn't. She was 16. Okay, here's her kids. There's a couple of her kids' birth records. Well, the story unfolded in the newspapers. Now, the newspaper archives, there's a lot of good stories in there, and you can find out all kinds of things. I found out my dad's birth. You find out accidents. I found out that one of my ancestors got struck by lightning and lived through it. Well, Blanche, the story was everywhere. Mr. Ternane, I guess is how you pronounce his name, he left his wife and divorced her. And the day that he divorced her, the next day, he married Blanche. Okay? And then she went up, and they had a little honeymoon in Illinois, and then his wife decided he wanted him back. She wanted him back. They had a couple kids, and she decided she wanted him back. So she started making his life miserable. And he took off and left Blanche to try and deal with this other wife. And it was a soap opera, and it was in all the newspapers. It was in Illinois. It was in Chicago's. It was in Virginia. It was out all over Iowa. And it was everywhere. And it was an embarrassment to her family. But it was in all the papers. They called her the one-day bride is what they called her. And it played out in the newspapers because the guy just took off, went to his wife, And Blanche was like, hey, wait a minute, we were married, this was legal. Well, come to find out, he said that the divorce to her second husband was not final. So they got an annulment on that. But it come to find out that no, actually she was divorced from him. So it was a mess. But anyway, he hired lawyers, and Blanche is chasing him all over the country trying to find him. Her and her mom are running all over trying to get a hold of him. And it plays out in the newspapers. I mean, this went on for, oh my word, 3 or 4 weeks at least that they were writing about it. And here's articles about it that I had written. Now, they said in the newspapers that Blanche was a real beauty, that she had dark hair and blue eyes. And this is a picture of her from the newspapers.
But they don't know which one is it.
And here's part of the arguments going on about saying that she's legal and that their marriage is legal. Now, he ends up hiring an attorney, and they get an annulment, which was kind of not, it really wasn't, he didn't have grounds for annulment because she really was divorced from the Brimmer. But it ended up to where it was an embarrassment. It was an embarrassment to the family. It was an embarrassment to her. And she ended up starting to get into some trouble. So financial trouble. And she couldn't get a job. She left her kids with her parents. And her parents shipped her off. And come to find out that my great-grandmother's sister, Annetta, who was married to a Clark at that time, she was out in California, in Los Angeles. So they sent Blanche out there to get her away from all the newspapers and all the stuff. But in the meantime, the newspapers and people offered her movie deals, book deals. They offered that she play the part in the movie about this. So that's where I think the story comes from, about her being in the movies. As far as I know, she never was in the movies, but she did get book offers. It was in the newspaper. She did get movie deals, and it was in the newspaper. So, and I got in the newspapers about where she came, and she had another name by this time. She came out with her aunt from California to see her folks. And at this point, her name was Ventura, and it had to have been her because there was no other girls that lived out there. So both stories are kind of true, but both stories are kind of false. Now, she ends up, her dad had TB. My great-grandfather had TB. And it ends up to where she went out, that she ended up, her grandkids looked for her because they were curious about her. And what are you pointing at? What are you pointing at? The time? The time? Is that what you're pointing at? Okay. What, is 13 minutes too long? She thinks 13 minutes is too long. Well, anyway, her kids tried to find her and find information out about her, and they found a few things. We have never found a death certificate. The last story the grandkids have is that she had another child, and the child's name was, I'd have to look for it, Samuel Lynn. I can't remember the last name. Anyway, all right, I found, I try to keep everything really organized. I try to keep things to where I put them in the right thing, and a lot of times I write stuff up so that really helps me, and I put where I found the records. Samuel Lynn Leah Howard. Blanche had married a Howard by this time. She was born the 23rd of March, 1929. Blanche was married to Samuel Lee Howard, born Memphis, age 70 when Samuel Lynn was born. Blanche was 29 per the BC, in which she was a little bit older. But in 1930, Samuel E. Howard lived in Los Angeles, listed as a lodger, married, no wife listed or child. In 1940, he is listed as Samuel Lee Howard with wife Olive, who was born in Missouri. She did not live with him in 1935, according to the census. Descendants state that they found a record of Blanche and her daughter being in a hospital in California. It stated that a man took them out. They don't know the man's name. That the hospital just said that a man took them out. Parents obit 1940 and 1947 lists their daughter as deceased. We know that's not true because one of her husbands came out and talked to my Uncle Wayne and talked to my grandfather and told him that she had died, and it was about 1968, 69 that happened. Excuse me, it was 1960, okay? No death certificate's been found, but then again, we don't know what her name was. She may have been married again. But those are the last records we have of her, but the search continues. And this is part 1 of Family Stories. Katie, you going to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
She's been really quiet today. Let's see if we can get her to talk. What do you think about Miss Hollywood? Do you believe that story? Do you think she went out there and was a silent movie actress? Do you know what a silent movie is? That's long time ago. They used to not have sound in music, so all they did, and it would be like they were moving really fast and stuff, and they called it silent movies, and then they would put music in, and then they would put flashcards that said what they were talking about, and the women would go, and they would do all these weird stuff. That was years and years ago. All right, let's talk to him. All right?
Bye.
Let's say goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye. This is
Katy
and Ginger Hawn Cooper, and we present the Determined Genealogist. Happy hunting, and may you find your Miss Hollywood.